Ryan Newcar would lead for the first 16 laps of the Homestead 350 before he'd lose the lead on lap 16 to Sonic OMT, who would lead all the way until lap 91 for how many laps is that? 85? 75? Something? I don't know. But Kurt Busch is obviously not happy about that. And then he would shove Sonic OMT on lap 91 and then take the lead for himself. Leading into lap 92, but on that lap, Johnny Blamer would somehow go from 46th to 13th. Then he went for the lead on lap 92, but then Ricky Hudson and Todd Marcus would both shove him. And for each shove, Johnny Blamer would go down a lap. So now he's 2 laps down. And then Ricky Hudson would bump Kurt Busch on lap 92 and then take the lead for the next, 25 laps. Kurt Busch said this after being shoved. And Todd Marcus would say this to Johnny Blamer. But then Lucas 95 and Sonic EXE would come to Johnny Blamer's defense, and so does Moray Clutchburn, Johnny's friend and teammate. And then Kurt Busch and Sonic OMT would get into a shoving fight for the next 20 laps after lap 99. And then Chick Hicks would take the lead for himself and lead for around 10 laps before Kurt Busch would flip Sonic OMT on lap 120. And now, no, Sonic OMT is not out, and Kurt Busch is not happy that Sonic OMT is not out. And his younger brother Kyle would push Ricky Hudson on lap 123, and he said this. Ricky stopped saying bad words like Kurt Busch, and Kurt Busch would push Ricky Hudson on lap 125, and then Lucas at 95 would shove Chick Hicks on lap 126, and this would allow Scott Windows to take the lead, but he would only lead for a little bit on from laps 127 to 128, where he would somehow crash while in the lead, and now he's out for the season. And then the King would take the lead from Windows after he's done, after he crashed, and Ricky Hudson would bully Scott Windows after his crash, and then this green car, who is a Piston Cup fan, would say this to Ricky Hudson, and Ricky Hudson would say something rude about that fan. Moray Clutchburn would shove Todd Marcus on lap 130, and Tony Gasworth would try to wreck Chick Hicks 1 lap later. And then, 1 lap after that, Lightning McQueen would take the lead and lead all the way into lap 227. But Bobby Carboni would have an engine failure on lap 135, and then Chick Hicks 1 lap later would wreck Brian Vickers. And then Sonic EXE would say that he has enough of Chick Hicks. But then Todd Marcus would say something rude to Sonic EXE. And then Kurt Busch would push me on lap 139. And then Wendy, being my girlfriend, would say this. And then she would shove Kurt Busch on lap 140. And then Lucas 95 would say this. And then Chick Hicks would push 8 cars on lap 141, which included me and Johnny Blamer, who went down another lap. And then Ricky Hudson would shove Jeff Corbett on lap 142 and say this about Ruby Nightcar. And Ruby Nightcar would cry after hearing this insult. But Rusty Wheelhouse would say this to Ruby Nightcar. And then Sonic OMD would say this to a bunch of the mean racers. But unfortunately for him, another mean racer's on the track. Eugene Carbareski would wreck Kyle Busch when he tried to wreck Ken Schrader on lap 144. And Kurt Busch is not happy about his younger brother getting wrecked. But Sonic OMT finds this amusing. And so does Ken Schrader, who says this to Eugene Carbareski. And then out of anger, Eugene Carbareski would flip Sonic EXE. And then Sonic OMT would say this. And Kurt Busch would say this. But unfortunately for him, Sonic EXE is not out. And of course, Kurt Busch would Brett Hollingus on lap 145, just as me, Wendy, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. got back on the lead lap. And then all of these cars, which included myself, would all get into a shoving battle until Lightning McQueen lost the lead on lap 227.